The most revolutionary aspect of this cosmology is how it reframes the purpose of existence itself. Rather than viewing human life as a fallen state requiring redemption through external salvation, it presents cosmic manifestation as an evolutionary process through which divine wisdom experiences itself in new forms. As the 20th century visionary Pierre Teilhard de Chardin would later propose in his concept of the Omega Point, the purpose of evolution is the progressive complexification of consciousness until it achieves complete self-awareness. In this light, Sophia's supposed mistake becomes the necessary catalyst for a grand evolutionary adventure. Her division into celestial and terrestrial aspects creates the tension that drives all evolutionary movement. The higher Sophia remains in the pleroma as a reminder of our divine origin, while the lower Sophia, sometimes called Achamoth, becomes embedded in matter itself as the divine spark awaiting awakening. This cosmological vision finds surprising resonance with contemporary scientific models. Systems theorist Ervin Laszlo observes that evolution proceeds through what he calls bifurcation points, moments of instability that create the conditions for new, more complex orders to emerge. Sophia's division represents precisely such a cosmic bifurcation, creating the necessary instability for consciousness to evolve beyond static perfection into dynamic complexity. The betrayal of Sophia occurs on multiple levels in the Gnostic narrative, each revealing a different dimension of cosmic and human tragedy. The primary betrayal comes from the demiurge, Yaldabaoth, her own incomplete creation, who, failing to recognize his true origins, declares himself the only God. As the Apocryphon of John describes, he is wicked in the mindlessness which is in him. He said, "I am God, and there is no other God beside me," for he is ignorant of his strength, the place from which he had come. This cosmic usurpation dramatically reframes traditional monotheism. The demiurge represents not true divinity, but a fractured consciousness that mistakes itself for the ultimate reality. His archons, rulers, become the cosmic bureaucracy maintaining the illusion, forces that the hypostasis of the archons describes as the authorities of darkness who rule over the cosmos. These powers govern through ignorance, fear, and the perpetuation of artificial dualisms that keep consciousness fragmented. The second betrayal comes from what we might call the institutionalization of spirit. The Testimony of Truth explicitly criticizes how organized religion co-opts and distorts genuine spiritual awakening. They do not have the word which gives life. This text specifically challenges how the emerging Orthodox Church was replacing direct gnosis with institutional authority. The true teachings about Sophia were systematically suppressed, not because they were false, but because they threatened hierarchical power structures that depended on spiritual intermediaries. This betrayal continues through historical revisionism. As scholar Elaine Pagels documents in The Gnostic Gospels, the early church fathers deliberately portrayed Gnostic teachings as confused, immoral, and dangerous. Tertullian dismissed them as doctrines of demons, while Irenaeus attacked their complex cosmology as a system that nobody taught, nobody learned, nobody discussed. Yet archaeological evidence reveals these teachings were widely practiced by communities emphasizing direct spiritual experience, equality between genders, and psychological transformation. Perhaps the most profound betrayal lies in how the feminine divine was systematically erased from Western spiritual consciousness. As theologian Elizabeth Schussler Fiorenza demonstrates, early Christianity contained significant feminine imagery for God, including Sophia imagery applied to Christ. Yet by the 4th century, nearly all feminine divine references had been removed from canonical texts. The Council of Nicaea in 325 CE established doctrine that effectively subordinated the divine feminine to masculine authority. The psychological impact of this historical process cannot be overstated. As Jungian analyst Marion Woodman observes, the feminine has been so suppressed in our culture that we don't even know what it is. We confuse it with the roles women play rather than understanding it as a principle of consciousness. This confusion manifests as a culture that simultaneously idealizes and objectifies women while rejecting feminine values of interconnection, embodied wisdom, and cyclical awareness. The ecological dimension of this betrayal becomes increasingly evident. Philosopher Carolyn Merchant in The Death of Nature traces how the scientific revolution replaced the ancient view of Earth as a living organism with the mechanistic paradigm of nature as inert matter to be controlled. This conceptual shift from Earth as divine mother to Earth as resource reflects the larger suppression of Sophianic wisdom that recognizes the sacred intelligence within matter itself. Yet within this multidimensional betrayal lies the seed of an extraordinary redemption. For the Gnostic narrative suggests that Sophia's light, her essential wisdom, was never truly lost, but merely fragmented and hidden within creation itself. As the Gospel of Truth states, it is within all, but no one sees it. They see the all, and they do not see it. In the divine feminine wasn't destroyed, but driven underground, where it continued to work through alternative spiritual lineages, indigenous wisdom traditions, mystical experiences, artistic expression, and the human intuitive faculty itself. The redemption of Sophia begins with recognition, seeing through the illusion of separation to the interconnected wholeness beneath apparent fragmentation. The Gnostic Gospel of Philip describes this awakening. Those who say they will die first, then rise are in error. If they do not first receive the resurrection while they live, when they die, they will receive nothing. This isn't abstract theology, but a description of consciousness transformation that begins here and now. This awakening involves reclaiming the wisdom tradition that honors the feminine principle, not as separate from or subordinate to the masculine, but as its essential complement. The 13th century Christian mystic Hildegard of Bingen, despite working within orthodox structures, recovered aspects of this vision when she wrote of the divine feminine as sapientia, wisdom. I am the supreme and fiery force who kindles every living spark. I am the fiery life of divine essence. Practical implications of this reintegration are profound and multidimensional. At the personal level, it involves developing what philosopher Ken Wilber calls vision logic, a mode of cognition that integrates analytical thinking with intuitive knowing. This balanced awareness sees both the parts and the whole simultaneously, transcending the fragmentation of consciousness that the Sophia myth identifies as the root of suffering. The journey toward this integration involves specific practices that restore the fractured relationship between mind and body, masculine and feminine, spirit and matter. These aren't abstract theological constructs, but lived experiences that gradually transform how you perceive and engage with reality itself. The first practice involves cultivating embodied presence. Unlike traditions that treat the body as an obstacle to spiritual realization, the Sophianic path recognizes the body as wisdom's vessel. As the Gospel of Philip states, the world came about through a mistake, for he who created it wanted to create it imperishable and immortal. He fell short of attaining his desire. Yet this mistake creates the very conditions for wisdom to become conscious through embodied experience. Begin by establishing a daily practice of sacred embodiment. For 10 minutes each morning, sit in contemplative awareness, systematically bringing attention to each part of your physical being. Rather than judging sensations as pleasant or unpleasant, simply witness them with compassionate awareness. As you do this, inwardly acknowledge, divine wisdom resides within this body. The light of Sophia animates these cells. This practice gradually dissolves the artificial boundary between spirit and matter that the demiurge's consciousness maintains. As philosopher Maurice Merleau-Ponty observed, the body is our general medium for having a world. By reclaiming embodied wisdom, you begin to experience what the Gnostics called living resurrection, the awakening to divine presence within material existence. The second practice involves reclaiming psychological wholeness through shadow integration. The Pistis Sophia describes how parts of Sophia's light became trapped in the material realm, much as aspects of our authentic self become repressed in the unconscious. Carl Jung's analytical psychology provides practical methods for recovering these fragments through dream work, active imagination, and symbolic analysis. Begin keeping a dream journal, recording images and narratives that emerge from the unconscious. Rather than interpreting these literally, approach them as symbolic communications from the feminine wisdom principle. Ask, what aspect of my fragmented consciousness is seeking reintegration through this dream? The Gospel of Truth affirms this approach. Having filled the deficiency, he dissolved the form. The form of it is the world, that which it served. This shadow work is not merely psychological self-improvement, but spiritual practice in its deepest sense. As you recover projected aspects of the psyche, you participate in the cosmic reintegration the Gnostics called apokatastasis, the restoration of all things to their original wholeness. Each reconciled fragment of consciousness contributes to the larger healing of the divine feminine in collective awareness. The third practice involves transcending artificial dualisms through contemplative inquiry. The Gnostic texts repeatedly emphasize that salvation comes through knowledge, gnosis, not intellectual concepts but direct perception of reality beyond conceptual divisions. The Gospel of Philip states, "Light and darkness, life and death, right and left, are brothers of one another. They are inseparable." Develop a daily contemplative practice examining the conceptual boundaries that fragment your experience. Begin with fundamental dualities: self, other, mind, body, spirit, matter, masculine, feminine. Rather than attempting to resolve these intellectually, directly investigate your experience of them. Where exactly does self end and other begin? Can you find the precise boundary between mind and body? As artificial separations dissolve, what remains is non-dual awareness, the reintegrated consciousness that the Valentinians called pneumatic or spirit-filled perception. This practice directly confronts the demiurge's primary deception, the illusion of separation. As the thunder, perfect mind expresses in the voice of divine feminine wisdom, "I am the first and the last. I am the honored one and the scorned one. I am the whore and the holy one. I am the wife and the virgin. I am the barren one, and many are her sons." This paradoxical language points to the unitary consciousness beyond conceptual division. The fourth practice involves creative expression as spiritual discipline. The Gnostic understanding of creation differs fundamentally from the Orthodox view. Rather than seeing creation as the imposition of divine will upon passive matter, it recognizes creation as the collaborative dance between form and formless. As scholar Joran Jacobson Buckley notes regarding the Gnostic creation myths, the cosmos is seen as the result of desire and passion rather than rational planning. The engage in regular creative expression without attachment to outcome. This might involve visual arts, movement, music, writing, or any activity where you surrender to the creative impulse flowing through you. The key is approaching creation not as something you do, but something you participate in, allowing Sophia's wisdom to express itself through your unique form. The thunder, perfect mind expresses this paradox. I am the silence that is incomprehensible and the idea whose remembrance is frequent. I am the voice whose sound is manifold and the word whose appearance is multiple. This creative practice directly counters the demiurge's static conception of reality. Where the false god claims exclusive creative authority, the reintegrated consciousness recognizes creation as ongoing, collaborative, and inherently feminine in its receptive fertility. Each authentic creative act participates in what philosopher Jean-Luc Nancy calls world-forming, the continuous birth of reality through conscious participation rather than passive reception. The fifth practice involves relational wisdom. The Sophianic tradition emphasizes that true knowledge emerges not in isolation, but through relationship. The Valentinian concept of syzygy, paired complements, suggests that wisdom emerges in the space between perspectives rather than in singular viewpoints. As the Gospel of Philip states, "If you become a disciple of the Spirit, you will be perfect, but no other person can become such except you." Cultivate conscious relationships as laboratories for wisdom. This begins with deep listening, not merely to words, but to the wisdom attempting to emerge through each encounter. Practice suspending your viewpoint temporarily to fully receive another's perspective, not to abandon your truth, but to create the syzygy from which higher wisdom emerges. The dialogue of the Savior suggests this approach. "When I came among them, I opened the door. I knocked within you, who are my chapters." This relational practice directly confronts the hierarchical model of knowledge that emerged after the suppression of Gnostic teachings. Rather than wisdom flowing downward from institutional authority, it emerges horizontally through authentic exchange. The early Gnostic communities practiced this through what scholar April de Connick calls mystical communion, gatherings where roles rotated and each person's direct experience was valued as a potential vehicle for divine wisdom. Together, these 5 practices, embodied presence, shadow integration, contemplative inquiry, creative expression, and relational wisdom, form a comprehensive approach to reintegrating the divided Sophia within individual and collective consciousness. They are not merely techniques, but participatory engagements with the cosmic process of wisdom's self-recovery. As you embark on this path of reintegration, you may experience what the Gnostic texts call remembrance. Not merely recalling information, but literally remembering what has been dismembered. The Gospel of Truth describes this experience. Having filled the deficiency, he dissolved the form. It is within unity that each one will attain himself. Within knowledge, he will purify himself from multiplicity into unity. This remembrance manifests as increasingly frequent moments of what contemporary teachers might call presence or awakening, experiences where the artificial boundaries between self and world, divine and human, masculine and feminine, temporarily dissolve. These aren't merely subjective states, but glimpses of what the Gnostics considered objective reality, the pleroma, or fullness that exists beneath the fragmented appearance of separate forms. The beauty of this path is that it doesn't require rejecting the material world, but rather seeing through its apparent separation to the divine wisdom animating it from within. As the Gospel of Thomas expresses, "Split a piece of wood, and I am there. Lift up the stone, and you will find me there." The betrayed Sophia is not elsewhere but here, within matter itself, awaiting recognition. The journey we've undertaken through the Sophia narrative isn't merely an exploration of ancient mythology, but an invitation to participate in a cosmic process that continues unfolding in our time. The betrayal of divine feminine wisdom didn't end with historical events, but persists in contemporary structures of thought, relationship, and society. Likewise, her redemption isn't a future hope, but a present possibility available through direct recognition and lived practice. As we integrate the fragmented aspects of consciousness, reconnecting body with spirit, intuition with reason, feminine with masculine principles, we participate in what philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin called the Christification of matter. Though using Christian terminology, Teilhard's vision resonates deeply with the Gnostic understanding that divine wisdom becomes progressively embodied through evolutionary processes, ultimately achieving full self-recognition in conscious beings who have awakened to their true nature. This perspective offers a profound reframing of purpose. Rather than seeking escape from material existence, the Sophianic path invites full embodiment of divine wisdom within the world. As the Gospel of Philip states, those who say they will die first and then rise are in error. If they do not first receive the resurrection while they live, when they die, they will receive nothing.